everyone, and welcome to my live creative time today. My name is Mandy Witherby from Mandy's Papercraft Creations, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Sydney, Australia. Welcome to another live creative time today. We are going to play with some really cool techniques today. So we are going to be playing with the Faux Patina. I had to think then, just went out of my head. Yeah, the Faux Patina technique today, and I'm changing it up a little bit. I'm doing it a little bit differently to how I have done it in the past. So I hope that you really enjoy this. So I'll bring this live stream up on my other devices so that I can see comments there. So let me just get that ready. And if you are jumping on, please say hi, let me know that you're here, and chat along with me. Now, if you have a Google account, if you log in with that Google account so that you are able to chat with me and I'm able to see your name and all of that, then that would be awesome. So I go live every Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube. And on Mondays, I go live in the afternoon over on Facebook. So if you're not already following me on either of those platforms, please follow me. I would love for you to follow me over there. So over on Facebook, you'll find my name or my business page as Mandy Witherby, Independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And here on YouTube, it's just Mandy Witherby. So hopefully you'll be able to find me. All right, so if you're watching the replay, thank you so much for coming back and watching my video on replay. I will post it up in Facebook later on as well, once we've finished recording and everything finalizes and all of that. We'll pop it over there as well. So, yeah. All right. So just a few things. If you're not yet following me on Facebook and Instagram, as I said, I already mentioned Facebook. I forgot to mention Instagram, but I'm over there as well. I'm also on Pinterest, so I'm everywhere. So please look me up and follow me over on all of those platforms. And thank you so much. Now, I do have a blog as well, and over on my blog, you'll find lots of creative inspiration. As well, while you are there, you can click on my subscribe to my newsletter. Here's my blog here, mandyspapercraftcreations.blogspot.com, and there is also a subscribe button there, so you can click, a newsletter subscribe button there, so you can click on that, and that will then subscribe you to my newsletter, and you'll get a weekly newsletter email from me straight to your email inbox, and I'll be able to keep you up to date with everything that is happening. So we have got a couple of friends jumping on now. We've got Deborah. Good morning, Deborah. How are you? You can only watch for a little while. You've got some, you've got to go out to knitting group. Lovely. Oh, that's so good. Well, thank you for jumping on. Hey, Athena, how are you? Athena's waiting for her car to be serviced. A great way to pass the time by watching me. Oh, yay. That worked out very well. I hope you're doing well, Athena. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, so as I mentioned, I'm going to be playing with the Faux Patina technique today, and I'm changing it up a little bit, and I'm using some different medium to what I would normally use when I do it, and I'll show you the difference when we get there. Oh, hey, Sherry, all the way from Indiana. Great to have you with us. Thank you for joining. All right, so remember to subscribe to my newsletter if you are not already subscribed, and I will keep you up to date weekly with everything that's going on with Stampin' Up. I'll give you creative inspiration. There's always information there about my classes as well. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Australia and you would love one of these beautiful catalogs, then, let me just turn the plastic cover over because it reflects the light a little bit more. There we go. So there's our beautiful new annual catalogue. This one just went live in May, the beginning of May, beginning of this month, 2nd of May. So it hasn't been around very long, and there are so many beautiful, beautiful products in here. So this is my wish list at the moment as it stands. And I just put another order in a couple of days ago. So that should be here tomorrow, I think. Yeah. So gradually, but we do have this catalog for a whole year. But I would love to get one of these out to you. So if you don't already have a demonstrator that you're working with, then please feel free to let me know. All of my links will be in the comments here on my video. So you'll be able to navigate your way around wherever you need to go, request a catalog. There's a link for that as well. And I'd love to send one out to you. So it doesn't come spiral bound, of course. I get mine spiral bound from the local stationers, and then I add all of my little tabs. This helps me find things and reference things, especially the things that I'm going to all the time. And then this is my wish list, of course, as I mentioned. So, all right. My throat is a little bit dry today, so forgive me if I have to keep taking sips of water. It's all good. I'm not unwell. It's my throat is a little bit irritated today, but all good. All right. Well, I think that's all the newsy things I needed to tell you, all the housekeeping type things. Now, if you've got any questions or anything as we go along, please feel free to ask. And either myself or Amber, my moderator, will answer you. If I miss anything, Amber will pick up on that and let me know, or she might even answer it for me. All right, so without further ado, what we will do is we will cover up the camera so that I can transition down to the desktop. I just do that so that I don't make you all dizzy, because there's a lot of fiddling around with my stand, and we can get crafting. So this project, there's quite a few steps, so we should get started straight away. So here we go. So bear with me, I will cover up the camera. Okay, and then we'll do, I'll flip this down first, and then we will get everything ready. So here we go. Okay, and now if I flip, you should be down onto the desktop. There we go. All right, we'll just zoom in a little bit there. All right, and we'll just get this up. Now, I don't have my AirPods plugged in today because I had them plugged in last Thursday when I went live here on YouTube, but they didn't seem to make a whole heap of difference. So I'll just move a few things out of the way here. Yeah, they didn't make a whole heap of difference. Sorry, you'll probably hear my voice changing a little bit at the moment while I just get everything ready, because I'm just going to straighten up the camera. Get that out of the way now. I'm running out of room to put things today. There we go. And we'll just straighten everything up. I think that's not too bad. Okay, so we'll just move this up. And we're going to go up this way. All right. Okay, so unfortunately you can see my iPad there. I'll just move that up a little bit actually. If I move that up, that might be out of view a little bit better. There we go. That's a little bit better. You can just see the very edge of that. Alrighty, and I think we can zoom in just a tad more. We'll get it all set up, get everything ready, and take that up there. Okay, so you can see my blog details there, and this is also my host code here for May 2023. Now, when you use my host code, when you shop with me, when your order is over $75, I will send you a lovely thank you gift. Now for May, I have an additional thank you gift, which I forgot to grab out again. Let me grab that. Okay, an additional thank you gift for May. Now also let me know if you can hear me okay, because I've got my camera in a different orientation. So just let me know if you can hear me okay or not, and then I can adjust if needed. All right, so my additional gift, so my monthly gift is a big tutorial bundle. And I think this month in the tutorial bundle there's 42 tutorials, but so that is, you will receive that if you're spending over $75 with me. But orders of any size will receive a card kit to make this card here. So this isn't the card we're making today. This is, I'm just showing you this for because it's my gift. So you'll get a card kit that looks like this. Okay, you've got all the pieces in there that you need to create this card. The only thing you would need additional is a sentiment stamp to stamp your greeting. Everything else is in the kit. So that is an additional gift for this month, which yeah, you can receive with any order. So if you place that order in my online store, you can find my online store either through my blog, which is mandyspapercraftcreations.blogspot.com, or you can go to my website, mandywitherby.stampinup.net. So check both of those out anyway, because there's lots of different things on both of those platforms. Okay, let's have a look at what we are going to be creating with today. So we are going to be playing with the Earthen Elegance Suite. Now, in fact, the suite is a collection of products that coordinate beautifully together. So we've got the gorgeous designer series paper, we've got the stamps and the die bundle, and we've got this beautiful ribbon as well. Now we're not using the entire suite today, we're actually just focusing on the stamp set and the dies. So on Monday I created with this suite as well, and we used everything from the suite, which is beautiful. And this is the card that I made on Monday in case you missed it. So I used the designer series paper, I used the stamps and the dies. Well, actually, yeah, I used the stamp for this pot and the fern here, and then for the sentiment. But we used a lot of die cutting, lots of texture on this card, did some tearing, some different distressing techniques. Yeah, created a little bit of faux patina on this pot, but I'm doing a full faux patina background today, so stepping it up a little bit, and yeah, doing a lot more today. So this is where you'll find it. So this is the annual catalogue on pages 70 and 71, but focusing on this beautiful stamp set and some of the dies as well. So when you purchase the suite collections, you can purchase the products individually. So they're all listed over here on page 70 individually, or you can purchase all of them for one bundle price, and there's one bundle code there too. If you want all of those products, you just put in that code, or if you want the individual products, then the individual codes are listed here. If you want to get the stamp set and the dies, be sure that you are using the bundle code, because when you use the bundle code, you actually save yourself 10%. Okay, and that's the best way to get them. And if you're buying the stamp set, you'll want those beautiful dies as well. They are gorgeous, and vice versa. If you want if you're purchasing the dies, you'll want the beautiful stamp set to go with it too. So make sure you use that code down here on page 71 for the bundle, the Earthen Textures bundle, and you'll save yourself 10%. All right, beautiful, beautiful samples in here too. I love these. They just look absolutely gorgeous. All right, so that's what we're playing with today. Let's pop my catalogue over there on my chair, my other chair. All right, so let me show you what we are creating with today. So we've got, here's our stamp set and our dies. So the stamp set's got some really beautiful greetings on there as well, and for different occasions. And the dies are super cool. So you've got dies that cut out each of the stamp sets, each of the stamps in the stamp set. And then you've got some additional dies. So we've got this texture here. We've got a fern, these two big fern leaves here. We've got some extra twigs. This little part here is the top of the pot, and we are actually using that one today. So I'll show you how to use that. And then this cool one here, this one is actually an embossing die. So it only embosses, it doesn't cut, and it gives you a really cool technique. In fact, yes, I do have still. I showed this on Monday as well, but I'll show you again today. So this is what I'll just get some more light in here. So this is what the texture looks like. It's quite subtle, but it's really lovely. It's quite different to our embossing folders, where it doesn't impress so deeply into the cardstock that you get a lot of texture on the other side. You get a little bit, but not too much, but it's mostly this side. So it's like a debossed finish on it. It impresses the image like into the cardstock. So yeah, so that's a really cool texture. Really love that. And if you added a bit of ink to that as well, if you brushed over with your dauber or your blending brushes, that would really bring that detail out as well. All right, so I keep my dies on magnetic sheets, and so they just come on a piece of like cardstock with some adhesive to hold them on. But I knew I'd use these ones a lot, so I put these ones onto magnetic sheets, which makes it much easier for me. All right, a couple of additional products we're going to be playing with today. So this is the first time I am using the Radiating Stitches dies. Now the Radiating Stitches dies, you won't find this in the catalogue. This is one of the online exclusive products that you can find in the online store, okay? But we're going to be using one of the frames for that today. And it's the first time I'm using them on these projects, because I just got this one in my last order. So really beautiful. And the other thing we are using today too is the Quatrefoil Tile Embossing Folder. And this is the one we are going to use to create our Faux Patina technique. So this one's really fun. Now this one, the Quatrefoil Tile Embossing Folder, is actually on low inventory at the moment. So if you want to get that, then maybe get that soon so that you don't miss out. That is here in Australia, that it's on low inventory. I'm not sure in other markets, but yeah, here in Australia and New Zealand, it's on low inventory. So they are the things. So this one is the key for the Faux Patina. Yeah. All right, so I will show you the beautiful project that we are making today, and this is it here. So this is the Faux Patina background that we're going to create today, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And then this is the Radiating Stitches die for the border, and then we've used the Earthen textures, stamps and dies to create our focal image on the front there. So that's what we're going to be creating today. Now the other key component today for our Faux Patina is the new Metallic Enamel Effects Basics. Okay, so this comes in a pack of 3. You get silver, copper and gold. We're going to be using the gold today, and I'm going to show you how to incorporate that into the patina technique. Yeah. All right, so we'll get started. So I'll pop my card over to the side. Now I have played with the Faux Patina technique before, and there's a few, well actually let me leave this here so that you can see the comparison. So last time when I was playing with this technique, I actually used embossing powder, okay? But today we're going to be using the Metallic Enamel Effects to give a similar look. So if you don't like playing with embossing powder, or you're not comfortable with embossing powder, or perhaps you don't have a heat tool, then this is a different way that you can create it today. But I'll just show you some of my old samples that I created previously. I actually taught this in my technique club that I used to run, and we had this as one of our techniques that we did about 3 years ago now, actually. So that's one of them there. And if you're not familiar with the term patina, patina is it's what happens to metallics such as copper or brass over a period of time. It oxidizes, and then you end up with this sort of these greeny bluey tones coming through on the metal. And that's, yeah, so if you want more information about patina, I can't remember the full explanation of the term, but you can Google it. It's Patina. But you get lots of blue and green tones coming through. So these are some of the ones that I've created. This one's quite a blue one. You can also do it with copper. So this was with the copper embossing folder. Copper embossing powder. And you can do it with the copper Metallic Enamel Effects too. So, but if you compare the difference between the embossing powder and the metallics, you'll see that there's quite a bit of difference. The embossing powder is much heavier and deeper, whereas the patina on this one here is much more subtle. So it depends on which way you want to do it. You can do it with either, but we're going to have a play with the metallic enamel effects today. All right, now I did do one in the copper last night first before I created this one, and this is the one with the copper on it. Okay, so I changed my technique a little bit between doing this one and this one, because when I played around a bit more with my second one. But isn't this gorgeous just as a background? Isn't that just so pretty? But yeah, I played around a bit more with it on this one, and I got a much better effect. So I'll show you what I worked out last night when I was having a little play. So that's what we're going to be playing with. So lots of fun, a little bit messy, but yeah, lots and lots of fun. All right, so we'll bring in our kit. I'll pop the card over to the side, just out of the way so that I don't get that all messy. There we go. All right, and there's my notes there for myself. So we've got lots of bits of cardstock here, and I'll go through all of these pieces. So we've got a card base. Now, I work in metric because here in Australia, that is the measurement that we work in. I know that a lot of you work in imperial because you're from different markets, etc., different countries. One thing, a few people have asked me about converting my measurements to, or giving my measurements out in inches as well as in centimeters. I don't tend to do that a lot because our card base here in Australia, if cutting from the A4 cardstock, it's actually a different size to the letter size cardstock in America, for instance. So we use A4 cardstock. And our cardstock measures 29 centimeters long, and then I've cut by 21. So I have actually cut this in half lengthways. So this becomes 10.5 by 29.7 centimeters. And then I have scored and folded that in half at 14.85. Okay, so that's a half of an A4 sheet. So here the card basis for an A4 sheet is narrower and taller, whereas in America, when you're using imperial measurements from a letter size card piece of cardstock, and if you cut yours in half, yours would be shorter but wider. So my layers would not fit on your card and vice versa. So with the actual layers, you just need to tweak the measurements. Okay, so just so that you understand, yeah, how that does and doesn't work. So I've got a full card front piece of Very Vanilla. This is the one we're going to do some stamping on. So this one is 10.5 centimeters by 14.85. So basically that's the same size as that. So it's just a quarter piece of cardstock. So whatever size your cardstock is, just cut a quarter piece and that should be enough for your stamping. I do have some additional little pieces that I just cut for my sentiment. You only need one, but I always like to have spares in case I have any stamping boo-boos. These are just 1 centimeter wide strips, and 1 centimeter wide strip in inches would be 3/8 of an inch. Okay, the length of this that I need is about 6 centimeters long, but basically you can just trim it. You can just stamp your sentiment on there and then just trim the ends. Okay, all right. Now, are we still live? Let me just check my camera. Oh yeah, I'm just checking because my computer has frozen. Oh no, we're back. Good, good. All right, so we've got those pieces. Now we do need a layer piece. Now this layer piece measures 10.1 centimeters by 14.45 centimeters. So this is just basically going to give me a 2 millimeter border around the edge. This is the piece we're going to be using for our faux patina. Now, if you are working in a different market, now don't worry if you miss all the measurements, because the measurements will be up on my blog. Okay, I'll have them up by the end of tomorrow on my blog. Just cut your standard card front size that you would cut for your card base. Okay, yeah, and then we've got an additional piece of Very Vanilla, which is going to be what we're going to die cut our second largest frame out of. So whatever size piece you need for that. My piece measures, this one was actually a scrap, so it's not a full piece. Mine's just under 8 centimeters by 10.5. Okay, so that was just a scrap left over. Then you're going to need, then you're going to need this piece, which is going to be the matte layer. And this one, see, I haven't, I do have this one written down actually. This one is 7 centimeters by 10.5. And then I've just got scraps of all of these. So I've got scraps of copper clay, crumb cake, early espresso, and pretty peacock. Okay, so they're just all little scrappy bits that we need for die cutting. All right, so we're going to start with the patina, because that is going to be the main part of the card, or the background, and that's going to take a little bit of time to create. So I'll pop all of these pieces just to the side for the moment. All right, so this is the really fun part. So first things first, we need our embossing folder. All right, so we'll take that out of the packet. Now this is a standard embossing folder. It's not one of the 3D embossing folders, okay? So depending on your die cutting machine, if you're using the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, I'll show you how to layer the plates for this embossing folder. But if you're using a different machine, you'll just need to alter the plates that you are using in your machine. Let's take a little sip of water. All right, so first things first, what we need is some crumb cake cardstock. Now my crumb cake, the label has faded, so don't worry, it's not actually green. It is a brown color, it's not green. It's just the label has faded. We're going to need some blending brushes today as well, so I'll just get out my dark one for my browns. You'll also need some sponge daubers as well. So I've got 3 sponge daubers here, one for early espresso, one for copper clay, and one for crumb cake. If you're unfamiliar with these blending tools, the blending brushes come in 2 different sizes. This is the largest. So they come in a 3-pack, okay, and then we have small blending brushes as well, which we're not using today. We're just using the large ones. With the sponge daubers, they come in a pack of 5, and yeah, I like to have one for every color. So You'll see mine are very inky because I use the same ones over and over and over. Okay, so first things first, we are going to, oh, the extra thing that you will need is a clear block. What we're going to do, I'll just pop my cardstock over this side for the moment. What we're going to do is we are going to stamp our ink onto our block to make a paint palette, basically. Okay, you will get a stronger color coming out, taking the ink from your block. Now what we're going to do is we're going to ink up the inside of our embossing folder. Now the side that you want to ink up is the side that has the Stampin' Up logo on it. Okay, that's the front piece. That's the piece that we want to open up. So I'm going to open it up and pop that down there like that. I'm going to pick up the color from my block and we're going to use our blending brush to add that color to the inside of our embossing folder. Okay, so make sure you've got some scrap paper or something like that underneath you. I'm using my grid paper because you are going to get ink everywhere. All right, we'll add a little bit more ink to our block and you just keep repeating this process until all of the inside of that embossing folder is colored. Now we're not coloring the inside of the other side, the back side. We're only coloring this side that has the Stampin' Up logo on it. Okay, and we want a nice deep coating of ink there. Now you can take your brush directly to your stamp pad, or sorry, yeah, you can take your blending brush direct to your stamp pad if you like, but I find that you get a better depth of color doing it this way on the block. Okay, so we just add this ink all over. Now don't be worried that you're going to damage your embossing folder in doing this. You won't. These just are really easy to clean just by running under some water under the tap, and that ink will just wash straight off your embossing folder. The only thing I would say is don't ever do this with stays on ink because then you will stain your embossing folder. But the water-based inks, they are fine for using for this technique. Okay, I might just grab a little bit more. It does use a fair bit of ink. We want a good coverage on our embossing folder. Let's do a little bit more along the bottom there. There we go. I think that's pretty good now. So you can see that ink there. I'll just close up my ink pad. There we go. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our folder and the front part is going to have the ink on it. Now I wrote myself a little note that this is for the piece for the patina because I've got two different size pieces of Very Vanilla. So I'm going to put the front side down on the embossing folder. Okay, and being very careful to hold that in place while I pop the close the embossing folder. We'll just move that over. All right, now I'm going to bring in my large machine. This is my large Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And the plates that we're going to use for this embossing folder, just trying to hold that still there, is our #1 base plate. We're not using the adapter plate #2, okay? We don't want that this time. We want a clear plate #3. Then we'll put our embossing folder in. Now when you're putting your embossing folder in your machine, make sure that you put the hinge part in first, okay? So hinge, oh, actually I'll just change the plates over because this one's a little bit warped. Just put this one in because that one's flatter. Then put the embossing folder in, hinge first, and then another clear plate over the top. Okay, just holding that in place. Okay, line that all up and It's going to make a bit of a pop. Oh, it didn't. There we go. I thought it was going to make a big loud pop when it came out the other side. Okay. So how's the volume going? Is everything... Oh, you're very welcome, Sherry. You're very welcome. Okay. So now when we open up our folder, we have this. Now this on its own is beautiful anyway. Now I'll just pop this folder to the side and I'll run that underwater and clean that off later on. And then I just use an old tea towel to dry it. But how gorgeous is that? Look at that. Now that on its own is a beautiful background. And I did this last night as well with Pretty Peacock. Oh my goodness, it was gorgeous. It was absolutely stunning. But there you go. So that's the first step of the technique. And that in itself is a technique with the inked embossing folder. So you can do that with any of the embossing folders and you get this really beautiful look. All right, now the next thing we need to do is we're going to add now some additional colors. We're going to layer up some additional colors to this. So we are going to be using, let me just get my paper there. We are going to be using some Balmy Blue, Pretty Peacock, Mossy Meadow, and Early Espresso. Okay, so Early Espresso, Mossy Meadow, Pretty Peacock, Balmy Blue. All right, and I have got brushes for each one of those colors. Oh, not that one, that one's for something else later. Okay, so we're going to start just layering these colors down in random sections on this piece here. So we're going to, this time we are loading up our brush directly from our stamp pad, and we're just going to be adding random bits of color. And this is how we're going to create the patina. So we're just adding the Balmy Blue to begin with. Now you can always come back in with more color, so you don't have to go too heavy to begin with. In fact, it's probably a better idea not to go too heavy with your colors to begin with until you're sure that you've got, you know, the right depth of color. Okay, so there's our Balmy Blue. Next, we're going to come in with a little bit of Peacock. Now, Peacock is much deeper, of course, much deeper color. Actually, let me put it over this side. So Pretty Peacock. Now, if you're not sure, a good thing to do is to just dab off a little bit of, well, actually also too, with these deeper colors, it is always a good idea just to dab your brush off onto your scratch paper first before going on to your cardstock. Now this is a much deeper color. Okay. So just pretending that this is the oxidation, I think. How do you say it? I'm not sure. But yeah, just pretend that it's, you know, oxidizing the metal. All right, so now we'll go in with a little bit of Mossy Meadow. And as I said, we can come back in with any of those colors if we find we need more of any particular color. So Mossy Meadow. Now, when you look at this to begin with, you think, oh my goodness, that looks like a hot mess. but wait until you see the finished effect. It really gives a great effect. There we go. And you can layer the color, layer the colors like on top of one another as well. Okay, so that we're sort of blending those colors together. All right, now what we don't want is we don't kind of want any white sections left. So if you see any parts that are white, you'll go over those with some of the color. Now this is early espresso. Now this is another dark color, so dab it off first on your paper. And we're just going to go over some of those white spaces to give them a bit of color as well. Now every time you do this, you're going to get a different background piece, because it'll, you know, the color will lay down differently each time. It'll be in different sections each time, so it's always going to look different every time you do this. Now I'll just give a light coating over the whole thing. There we go. All right. There we go. Okay, so now if I compare that to my first one, we'll have a look and see it actually does look quite different. So the colors are laid down in different areas. We're going to be covering up that middle section, so it's more the borders that I'm looking at. Okay, so I might add a little bit more color around the borders. So I'm thinking a little bit more of the balmy blue. So we'll come in with the balmy blue. Get my balmy blue brush out. Dab that off. So you can just layer those colors, keep layering those over the top of one another until you're happy with the finish that you get. All right, so that's looking pretty good. So it's a pretty cool technique. It looks really amazing having all of those colors just layered on top of each other. Now you could use that like that, because it does give a really great background effect. Quite an aged sort of looking effect, but we want it to be patina, so we need some metallic. So we're going to come in with our Metallic Enamel Effects. Now this is the part where you could use Versamark ink and gold embossing powder, okay, which is how I did my original ones, which I showed you earlier. But I'm going to show you how to do it with Metallic Enamel Effects. So what I've got is I've got my silicone craft sheet, and I've got some craft sponges here. Now craft sponges you can purchase from your local craft supplier. They usually come in a circular sponge. I just cut mine into quarters, and yeah, just use like one little wedge at a time. Now the first thing you might notice is my silicone craft sheet has got all this metallic on it. I was playing with the copper first last night and then with the gold, and I liked the finish that I got better with the gold for this project. This will wash off your silicone craft sheet, okay? So you don't have to worry that you've ruined your silicone craft sheet. I will be able to just take that to the sink and just wash that off, or you can soak it in some soapy water, okay? You'll notice down here too, I've got some little what look like little embellishments. Now I created them myself with the Metallic Enamel Effects just by doing little dots of the metallic effects and letting them dry. Now you can do that straight onto your project, but it does take a few hours for it to fully dry. Okay, so depending on how thick your dots are as to how long they will take to dry. Okay, so that I started with putting the Metallic Enamel Effects onto my silicone craft sheet, then dabbing my sponge into that and then onto my project. But what I found last night as I was playing was it works better if, and actually I'm going to get an additional scrap piece of paper. I've got some here. to put underneath this while I do this part of the technique, because this is going to be a little bit messy. What I found worked better last night was if you just squeeze this straight onto your card. Now don't freak out. It's all good. It looks scary when you first do it, but then you're going to dab this and move that around. But it gives you a thicker covering of the Metallic Enamel Effects, because it does want to soak into that sponge, but you don't want it to really soak into that sponge too much. So we're just going to work on a small section at a time and just dab that with our sponge, spread it out a little bit. Okay. Now, as I said, we're not going to see the center part, so you don't need to worry too much about that center part. We will see some of this down the bottom, however. Okay, so we're just going to dab, dab, dab. Now you can be quite liberal with it, like you want to lay down a good covering of the enamel effects. And you'll notice that I'm not doing it over the entire piece. We're just doing it in little sections. All right, we'll put some down here. And again, dab, 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 dab away. All right, just for teaching sake, I will just add some to the center as well, so that we've got a full piece with the patina effect. Okay, and we might put a little bit just on the corner down here too. All right, now that is quite quite wet at the moment. It's kind of gluey. It seems a little bit similar to like a glue base with that enamel effects with the metallics. Now what I found last night was, if you dry it with your heat tool, it dries a lot quicker. But not only that, the more you heat it, the more it'll actually cook it. And when it starts to bubble and sizzle, you get this beautiful effect to it. Now, you only want to use the heat setting number 1 on your heat tool, okay? So I'm going to turn that on. I'll let that heat up for a moment. We'll turn it this way so that we're not heating up my labels there. All right, and then we're just going to hold this on. Now this takes a few moments, so you'll just have to bear with me. But yeah, it's a great way of drying it quickly. If you leave that to just dry itself, that's fine too, but it will take a little while. But I found with the heat tool, you can heat it more, and I wanted that bubble effect so that it puts more texture into the background rather than letting it just dry flat. So you're basically cooking it. But you need to be careful that you don't burn your cardstock too. So now if you were doing this with embossing powder, you would just heat that until the embossing powder melted and became glossy, and you will get sort of a more detailed, I'm just pulling out one of the other ones. You'll get a more sort of heavier, because you can go over that again a second time, and you'll get a heavier sort of metallic look. Okay, so I'll keep that out so that we can compare. Now I want to see it start to bubble a little bit and sort of fizzle just a tiny bit. That's when I know that it's good and cooked. And I'm just using the low setting so that I don't burn my cardstock. Haven't tried it with the hotter setting, but it would probably, if you are using embossing powder, you would use heat setting number 2. Okay. Now your cardstock is probably going to want to buckle a little bit, but that's okay. We will fix that once we have this all dry. Okay, we'll move on to the next section. So it is wanting to curl up a little bit, and the paper underneath is also curling up. So what I might do is I might put my other silicone craft sheet underneath there just to protect the paper from the heat. Okay, so I can see that's starting to bubble a little bit now, which is great. If you just want to just dry it, don't heat it to the point where it's bubbling. Okay, I can hear it crackling a little bit. But that's kind of the look that I want. I want it to be a little bit bubbly because I want that texture. Okay, move along to the next section. This one's quite wet because I laid it down quite thick over here. And it's starting to bubble. Perfect, that's what we want. The bubbling is what we want for this particular technique, but if you were just drying this, you probably wouldn't want it to bubble. Now the good thing about this is when you are heating the enamel effects, it doesn't give off a strong smell like when you are heating embossing powder. It's quite strong of a smell, and some people, you know, don't like that or can't tolerate that or get allergies from that or whatever, but this actually doesn't have a strong smell, which is really good. This is just a little bit slower than using the embossing powder, but I just wanted to play with the enamel effects in a different way and see what else we can do with them. Okay, we'll move over to here. We want all of this to be dry before we put together our card base, obviously. Now you probably can't see that starting to crackle and bubble on camera, but that's okay. So this is the part where you just need patience. So feel free to make yourself a cuppa at this point while this is drying. Okay, we'll move up here to this top area. Now because we've used the sponge, it won't be as wet as if we have just laid that enamel effects straight down, because it is quite texturized, like as in depth. You get quite a bit of depth with it, but because we sponged it on, we've got a thinner coating, so it doesn't take quite as long to dry, but it will still take a little bit. Okay, it's starting to sizzle a little bit. All right, we'll go over to this corner. This is the last section here to dry now. Hopefully I've got that fairly well dry. So has anybody tried the faux patina technique before? Let me know in the comments if you've tried this before. It's a really fun technique. And as I said, every time you do it, you're going to get a different finish, a different color. So every card will be unique because you never lay the colors down exactly the same each time. Every time I've done this, I've always got a different finish. Okay, let's check that now. Now, that metallic is going to be a little bit hot and the cardstock might be a little bit hot, so just be careful when you're handling this. All right, so just give it a little fan to cool it down a little bit. All right, let's see. Yeah, that all feels really good. Great. Yep, that's all nice and dry. Now, if your cardstock has started to curl up and act up a little bit, what you can do is flip it over to the back side, the reverse side. Whoops, no, we don't want the high heat, just the low heat. And we just heat it on the reverse side. We're heating the cardstock on the reverse side. And it just helps it to curl back the other direction. But we are going to adhere this down to our card base. So that's okay. Actually, I'll get rid of that piece of paper underneath. I'll just lay that on the silicone. Because this piece of paper, scrap paper, was curling up too. So just lay it down, curl it back the other way a little bit. So it will still be just a little bit wonky, but that's okay because we're going to adhere that to our card front. Now that should be fine. Okay. So there, whoa, it's a little bit hot. There we have our patina background. So yeah, so that's kind of what it looks like. Now, if you're still, you can still add more color at this point as well. So if you feel like you need a little bit more blue or a little bit more green, you can add a little bit more in at this point. Now, I might come in with a little bit more of the peacock, the pretty peacock, just to get a little bit more depth of that greeny blue color. So I'll just move that away. Just if you are going to do this and you're going to bring in a little bit more color, make sure that the enamel effects has dried, okay? Because otherwise you'll pick that up on your brush and you don't want to do that. There we go. So that is our faux patina background. Alrighty. Okay, so I'll pop that up there. Okay, so that piece is ready to go. So we can set that aside now and we can work on our other pieces. All right, so let me show you the difference. Now I've used a different embossing folder, of course, as well, and different colors too. This one I used white cardstock base with crumb cake in the folder, the same as I did this one. Then I used almost the same, balmy blue, mossy meadow, early espresso, and gold embossing powder. With this one I've added in the pretty peacock. Okay, and the gold color on the enamel effects is much more of a yellowy gold than the gold of the embossing powder. So depending on, yeah, the look that you're going for. So enamel effects, and this one is embossing powder. Okay, so you can see how they look a little bit different. All right. Okay, so we've done our background. So let's pop that to the side, and now we will create our other images. So we will do some stamping, and then we'll do some die cutting. So we'll get our sentiment labels out, and we'll get out our piece that we're going to use for our stamping. All right, now I've got my stamps already on blocks with the red rubber. Oh, these are the cling red rubber stamps. So we're going to be using, we're actually using all of the stamps today on all of on this stamp set, and just one greeting. So all of the imagery and one greeting. Okay. All right, first things first. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to stamp our pot. Now our pot is going to be stamped in Pretty Peacock. Oops, there goes my Versamark. Pretty Peacock. And this is the smaller, wider vase, which is the focal image. So we're going to stamp that in Pretty Peacock onto Very Vanilla cardstock. Okay. All right. Now we want to clean off each of these stamps as we go. So I've got my Simply Chamois here beside me. My computer is buffering, but it looks like on my iPad that I am still live, so all good. Okay, so that one's clean. Now I'm going to take a little bit of Pretty Peacock, and I'm just going to go over, so I don't want it too heavy, I'll just dab that off. I'm going to go over that stamped image with my Pretty Peacock blending brush and just add some extra colour to that pot. Okay, there we go. All right, so we're just adding a little bit of extra color there. Then we want to stamp our foliage. Well, actually, we might do our pot next. So we're going to stamp our pot in copper clay. So this is the really long, tall pot, but we're only using a portion of that. Now you want to leave a little bit of a gap in between so that you have space. Actually, let's just see. Did I allow myself enough for the pot? Because the pot was an extra piece. Actually, we're only using the bottom part of the pot, so we can probably stamp this off this side, actually. Yeah, we'll stamp that off the edge there because we're only using the bottom portion of the pot. There we go. All right. Ink that off, give it a clean. And we're going to do the same with this one as well. So we're going to add a little bit of colour. Where's my brush? I had a brush for that. Oh, there it is, in the tub, of course, right where I put it. Okay, so we're going to use a little bit of blending brush. A little bit of ink on the blending brush and do the same thing. We're just going to add some copper clay ink to that copper clay pot. Okay, just like so. All right, and then we'll stamp all of our foliage. Oh, actually one of those is in copper clay too. All right, so we'll do our copper clay one first because we had that out. This long tall one, this sort of sticky sort of looking one, we're going to stamp that in the copper clay. So I might do that one across the top as well. Okay, that one's copper clay. These ones I might just clean all at once. Then we've got, oh, not early espresso, sorry, crumb cake. Oh, there's the crumb cake. I'll put that up to the side. Crumb cake. Crumb cake is going to be for this furry, feathery looking one. Okay, so we'll do crumb cake for that one. Go this way. All right, and then Mossy Meadow for the smaller sticky looking one. I don't know what each of these plants are called, so that's my explanation of them. So turn that around that way. We want to leave a little bit of space in between so that we can get our dies in there. And in fact, I'll take this one off so that I can see where I'm lining this one up. There we go. Okay. So they're the ones that we're stamping. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah, that's it. Yep. Okay. All right. So that is all about stamping. So we'll clean all those stamps quickly on our Simply Chamois, which cleans our stamps nice and quick and easily. And the chamois can just be rinsed under the tap as well to get all that surface ink out. Let's put that one back on there so I can give that one. I think I did clean that pot, but I'll give it another go. There we go. Okay. Excuse me. All right, so while that is just drying for a moment, we'll stamp our sentiment, and we're going to stamp that with copper clay. Now, as I said, I've got lots of these little pieces already cut, and I've got two that are exactly the right length. These are I think they were 6 centimeters long. Where's my ruler gone now? Yeah, so they're 6 centimeters long to fit the sentiment, and I'm using the With Gratitude sentiment. So I just want to stamp that in the middle. Now, because I've already got a skinny piece cut, it can be a little bit tricky to stamp onto those little narrow pieces. So just have a test with your stamp first. And if you're unsure, I'm just going to bring that down a little bit closer to me. I might get my heading shot for a moment while I just line that up. There we go. Okay, so that was a little bit heavy. So we'll do another one because, you know, I can. That's why I have spares. Bring that down a little bit where I can see it. Actually, I've got that over the wrong way. Let's put it up that way. Line that up. There we go. That's better. Okay. So we've got that piece. So that is all the stamping done now. We're going to do a little bit of inking, but we've got to do die cutting first. Alrighty. Okay. Now what we're going to do with this is we want to make sure that's dry first. So just give that a little blow. We're going to take our paper snips, scissors, and we're just going to angle the ends. Okay, now I've already got this cut to the right size, so I'm going to go straight to the corner. Okay, and then the opposite on the opposite side. So from the bottom corner this time up to about there like that. Okay, so then we've got sentiment banner. All right, these can go in recycling. Those I might use for something else. All right, so while we've got this one out, we'll take our copper clay sponge dauber, and we're going to ink the edges of our sentiment label. Now just be mindful if you get any ink on your fingers, because I did this last night and I got ink everywhere. That might still be damp. Okay, so pop that over to the side to dry. And just check that you don't have any ink on your fingers that you're going to transfer to your other pieces, because that's what I did last night. And then I had to hide where I had the ink. All right, so we'll do some die cutting with these now. So we'll bring in our beautiful dies, our Earthen Textures dies. Take those out of the packet. So as you might imagine, this card actually took me quite a few hours to design. So I was up till the wee hours this morning designing this card. Oops. But I was really happy with how it turned out. Now the pot dies, they will die cut just inside the edge of the stamped image. Okay, so the die is actually a little bit smaller than the stamped image, but that's how they were designed, so don't be worried. With the pot, the long pot, we're only die cutting a portion of that. Okay, I just might put a piece of washi on the side there. So I'm using some old washi tape that I had in my stash to hold these dies in place. Okay, now let's see if we can fit all of these on at one time. What you don't want is you don't want your dies touching or overlapping, because then they won't cut. Okay, so you want to have a little bit of space in between each of those dies. Line it up, line up the stem. Oh, I'm going to need to get out some more washi because that piece is running low. So I use and use and use my washi tape until it completely falls apart. Before I add my washi tape, I do just dab it on my clothes, just so that it's not too sticky. Okay, we'll line up the next one. So I'll get a couple of pieces ready. This is some really old Stampin' Up washi tape from when we had washi. Stampin' Up don't currently have any washi tape. It's something that they bring in from time to time. Okay, so line that one up. So when you're adhering your dies, try and just adhere to on the die and then to the outside edge. Don't let your washi tape go to the inside where your stamped image is if you can help it, because in case, as it goes through the rollers push that washi tape on tighter, and you don't want that sticking to your stamped images, because then when you go to remove them, of course, they might get damaged. They might get torn if that washi tape is really stuck tight. All right, so we've got all of our dies there ready to go. Now an additional die we need is that one and that one. We need two of these ones actually, and that little one there too. So we're using nearly all of the dies. This one and this one I used on my project I made on Monday as well. This one I've only used as a sample so far. I haven't used that one on any of my projects yet. But I will at some point because I love it. Okay, so let's see how many dies we can fit on. I'll get my machine over. Now all of these dies, they do fit through the mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, but I wanted to do multiples at once, so I'm using my large machine. So I've got my number 1 base plate, my number 2 adapter plate. I'm turning mine upside down because mine is a bit bowed because I've been using it for so long. And then we've got 2 number 3 clear plates, one for the bottom and one for the top. So we'll pop that piece in. Actually, I might just run that one through first and then I'll do those additional pieces afterwards. So pop this plate on top and there we go. Whoop. Make sure that's going through straight. A little bit of creaking and cracking, but that's okay. It's meant to do that. All right. So I'll just pop those over to there for the moment. We'll have a look at those in a minute, but we'll die cut these other pieces. All right, so this is where our scraps come in. Okay, so let's move that up a little bit. So this is where our scraps come in. So we want... Okay, so whoops, throwing dies away here. We want to do this little die here. We want to do in the copper clay. So I'm going to cut this down just to the right size that I need. We want the top of the pot, which is the little handles here. We want to do that in the Pretty Peacock. Then we've got the twiggy looking ones. We're going to do that in, I think I did that in crumb cake and then I inked it. So we'll see if we can fit that on. Oh, just fit that there on our scrap. So I'll get some more washi. Actually, let me use some of that washi that I already had out. Let's see if I can get that off my dies that we just put through. There we go. So this one I'll adhere down because I haven't got, I've almost not quite got enough cardstock, but I just have. So I don't want that to move. So we'll pop that down like that. And yeah, so we'll just run those 3 through together, and then we've got to do some multiples of some of those. Okay, here we go. So sorry, this does bump the table a little bit when I do this on the table. Okay, so we've got our little sticky bits, our little branches. Just take that washi off. Oh, tearing cardstock there. That's okay. Okay, so there's our first set of little twigs, but we need another set of those in the darker color. And then we've got our pot handles. That's our pot handles. I'll show you how to attach those. Then we've got our little cross hashes, which do tend to stick in the dies a little bit. So I'll just poke out those additional bits of cardstock, and then I'll push in the little release holes. Sorry, I'm probably working off camera there. We'll push in the little release holes to pop that out. Okay, so we need another one of those. Now, see all these little bits that are here on my plate? Make sure you clean those off before you go to cut again. Just scraping them off into my paper scrap bin. All right, so we're doing another one of those and another one of these. So we'll do that there like that. This one tends to jump around a little bit because it's so narrow. So I'll just tape that down. That one's okay there. All right, and we'll die cut those. And then I think that's all for the die cutting. Oh no, we've got our border to die cut. So we'll die cut that one next. All right. So once we get all of this die cut, we're going to do a little bit of inking. I'll just get rid of these extra little pieces of cardstock. And then we're just going to put everything together. All right, so there's our extra little one of those. I think when you put these together, they kind of look like a little fence. They're kind of, I don't know, they make me think of like Aztec design. Kind of that kind of look. Oh, just totally ripped my washi. That's okay. And we'll just release those twigs. There's our second lot of twigs. Okay, so I think that's, oh no, we've got to do the border. All right, so while we've got our die cutting machine out here, we'll do our border. So we're going to do the second largest border. These ones I haven't put on my magnetic sheets yet because I only just got them, well, last week or the week before. I haven't used them yet. So we'll just take that second largest rectangle and we're going to die cut a piece of Very Vanilla. Now I think this piece is just the right size. So I'll get some of that washi tape, reuse some of that washi tape I had on my other dies to hold this in place because that's only just big enough. Let's put that on the two outside edges. There we go. Now, whenever you're working with a die that has a straight edge like that, when you're feeding it through your machine, whether you're using the large machine or the mini machine, always put it at a straight, at a little bit of an angle. And that just helps the rollers feed the die through because otherwise if you put it straight, it can make it hard for the rollers to feed it through and you get a really loud thump when you do that, just as it goes through the rollers. But if you turn it a bit on an angle, it's much easier to feed through. Okay. All right, there we go. And there's our beautiful frame with that lovely stitched border. Isn't that gorgeous? Love these dies. All right, and we'll pop this one away. Get rid of all our little bits off the desk. And we'll put this one away too. Okay. Washi tape. Alrighty. We'll move these plates. And we'll bring in all of our little pieces. So some of them have already fallen out of the dies. So this is all of our pieces. So we've got quite a few different pieces there. A little bit hard to see on our busy paper now because we've got ink everywhere. I'll just pop these to the side and I'll put them away later. All right, and we've got our sentiment there as well. Okay. So now what we have to do is, before we do anything with any of these pieces, we're going to do a little bit of work with them. So first of all, this piece, which we already inked over the top of, we're going to trim this piece down, and I'm going to trim it down about there. Would that be about the right height? Yeah, I'm going to trim it about there, and we're just going to trim straight across. So we're making a little short pot. Okay. Now let's see, is that about the same size as my original one? Oh, yep. That was good estimation. It's exactly the same size. Well, pretty close anyway. All right, so this extra piece we're not using, so we can just get rid of that. Okay, now I'm going to bring back in the crumb cake ink, and we are going to do a little bit of inking with the crumb cake, and we're also going to do a bit of inking with the early espresso. So I'll get both of those ready. Make sure we use the right door bar because the crumb cake is a lot lighter than the early espresso. So this one's done. This one here, this one is going to be inked with the early espresso. Okay, so we'll take the early espresso ink, load up our little door bar, and I'm just going to tap that on my paper so that it's not too heavy, and then we're going to dauber around the edges of the frame to just give that a little bit of ink distressing. So the early espresso, being that it's a darker colour, you don't need to reload your dauber quite as often as some of the lighter colours when you're doing this technique. Okay, good. So that's our frame done. Now our pot, I want to also do with a little bit of early espresso, just around the edges. And across the top. Okay, we'll do our handles as well. Okay, we're going to do the twigs in a little bit of early espresso, and I know that they are already dark, but it just does add a little bit of something. It's subtle, but it's subtle. I mean, it's subtle, but it's there. Okay, these ones need to be done. Those ones actually need to be done in the copper clay, so we'll do that in a moment. All right, now all these leafy ones, these are all going to be done with crumb cake because they're on vanilla cardstock. This one is actually already cut in crumb cake, but we're going to add a little bit of ink to that. Now I just can't remember if I added crumb cake to that or early espresso, but we'll do the crumb cake to begin with, and then I'll be able to tell. Let's see. No, it looks like I did use a bit of early espresso on that one. So just add, yeah, that's it. It makes a really big difference in the color. I'll show you actually before I do all of it. So see how I've added early espresso to the top, and the bottom part is still the crumb cake cardstock. So see how it changes the color, and that's the color that we're going for, is that deeper color. Okay. So we'll add a little bit more all the way down. Mostly only going to see the top of this, but oops. There we go. All right, so that one is done. All right, now these ones we're using, oh, I just picked up the wrong one, didn't I? Which I said not to do. We're doing crumb cake. Just around the edges, and then we'll just take it down the stem. Now we are going to trim those stems, but I will do it down the stem anyway, just because I'm not sure yet how much I'll be trimming. And then with the crumb cake, just brush it lightly over the stamped image as well for that one. Okay, same with this one. Just around all the edges. This sort of helps just to, well, it highlights the stamped image when you go around the edges, but also too, it takes away from having that really stark sort of very vanilla card base, because we want this to sort of look as natural as possible. All right, and then we're just going to take some crumb cake and then just brush that. I'm not reloading my dauber. There we go. And then this one, we'll do the same around all of the edges. Down the stem, and then without reloading your dauber, just go over the stalks of that plant. Okay, all right, so those bits are all done. Now we've just got to do these two here. They are going to be done in the copper clay. Okay, so we'll bring in our copper clay. Just go around. Again, load up your dauber, dab it off on your scrap paper, and then just go around the edges. I'll show you the difference. Can you see the difference? So excuse my very dry hands. Can you see the difference where I've added the ink around those two sides, but I haven't added it there? Can you see the difference there? It just adds that extra little bit of highlight to the piece. Actually, if I pop that onto, here, look, I'll put it onto my white cardstock that you might see better. See that there? You can see the difference, can't you, where you've added the ink. All right, so we'll continue that around all of the sides. Okay, and we're going to do the same with this one. Now with this one, you only need to put it along the two bottom edges like that, and then lay it down on your cardstock to then brush the ink over the rest. Okay, and that just sort of distresses it, just ages it a little bit. And it does make it a bit darker. I'll show you again on my white cardstock. You'll be able to see where I've daubered along the edges there, but I haven't yet daubered the center part. See how it just changes the color of the cardstock? You can really tell the difference there. Okay. And then we'll add, whoops, add some ink just along here. Through this, whoops. It's a little bit, wants to run away from me. There we go. Okay, so that is all our pieces. Now I might just wipe my hands here on a baby wipe before I touch the rest of my project, because I am bound to get ink everywhere. It is a little bit messy, But if you don't like getting messy, you can do all of these techniques wearing gloves if you prefer. There we go. Okay. All right, so they are all of our pieces. Now, what we need to do is we need to add our handles to our pot. So we'll take our handles. We're going to put a little bit of glue in that center part there, and then we're going to add the handles to the back of the pot. Okay, so the pot was stamped in Pretty Peacock, and I've die cut the handles in Pretty Peacock so that they coordinate. There we go. So now we've got our little pot with handles. Isn't that cute? Alrighty, so that's ready to go. All right, so all of our components now are ready to layer up onto our card. But before we do that, we need to do a few more things with our card front. Okay, so we'll pop all of these over. Let me see, I'll put them up here, up the side there. And there's our little sentiment label. All right, so let's bring in the rest of our card now. So we've got our faux patina, we've got our card base, and we've got our layer cut there too. All right, now first things first, that's our little layer for our border to sit on. First things first is we're going to add some ribbon to this piece, and then we'll adhere this piece to the card front. Now I've got some different ribbons, so there's some different choices that you can have. There is the natural wavy trim. This is the one that comes in the suite that we're working with, the elegant texture, no, elegant, oh my goodness, now it's gone out of my head. Earthen Elegant Suite. So this is really gorgeous. I decided not to use that one because when I laid it down on the patina background, because the patina is so busy and heavy, I thought that you kind of lost that a little bit on that background. So I decided not to use that one. Then we have the gold ribbon from the silver and gold combo pack. Now this ribbon, I noticed last night when I was playing with it, it has two sides. Okay, so this side, so it's not exactly the same on both sides. This side sort of has like a vanilla center. Okay, can you see that vanilla center? But then if I turn it over to the other side, it's fully gold all the way through. See that? So you can use it either which way you like. Now I thought that would tie in really well with the gold in the patina, but then I sort of thought when I laid it down, I liked it better with the vanilla side up. I kind of thought, oh, you do sort of lose it a little bit because the patina is so busy. You could do a double layer if you wanted a double layer of this, and then you would see it better. Okay. So that's sort of in keeping with the gold. But then I thought, you know what? I'm going to stick with the natural tones because we've got everything going with the natural tones. So I chose the burlap ribbon out of the Real Red and Burlap ribbon combo pack. And I just really liked that on the project. So that's what we're going to use. All right, so we're going to need two pieces of this. We're going to need one piece that just goes just about 1 centimeter past the edge of the ribbon, okay, and that's what we're going to adhere to the base of that. We're going to take some mini glue dots. Now this is the old packaging. I found this old package, old packet of it in one of my kits somewhere that I had stashed away. I'm like, oh, I should use those. All right, so we're going to add a glue dot to the ends of the ribbon that are going to tuck around the back. Okay, so just take that along the bottom. Just got that up a little bit from the bottom of the card. Wrap that around, tuck them around behind. Let's get that lined up. Wrap that around like that, okay. And then we don't want that pulling too tight. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take an extra piece of ribbon and we're going to wrap that around that piece and secure that on. But before we do that, we're going to adhere this to our card base. Okay, so I'm going to use a little bit of, what will I use today? I will use a little bit of Stampin' Seal. So you actually know, you know what? I'm going to use my tear and tape. You can use seal or you can use tape. You want a strong adhesive with this because we have done a lot of work with this piece of cardstock, creating that patina. It's got a lot of texture and it's a little bit warped, so you want a strong adhesive that's going to hold all of that down. Okay, and you've got ribbon there too, so you need to make sure that your adhesive goes over the top of that ribbon so that that ribbon portion holds down as well. Okay, so I like when I've got really usually when I have used an embossing folder, I like to use tear and tape, and if I've got ribbon on the back, I like to use my tear and tape as well. Okay, so we'll just take these out like this. We'll take that one out like that, and we'll take the top piece off first. And I'll get that lined up. My grid paper is a long way away from me today because of the positioning of the camera. I had to put it right up near the top. Now, when you first cut your card front layer with your even border, you'll notice that when you die cut it, when you emboss it, you will get a little bit of shrinkage. Now, depending on the embossing folder that you're using, that will determine how much shrinkage you actually get of the cardstock. Sometimes you get more than other times. I'll just do that side. Yeah, it just really depends on how much texture. With the 3D embossing folders, you get a little bit more shrinkage of the cardstock as it embosses that detail into it. This one, not as much. There we go. Okay, so that's down. But yeah, if the borders aren't exactly even top and bottom and the sides, that's why. It's to do with the shrinkage of the cardstock. But it'll be pretty close. All right, there we go. So we've got that bit on there. Now we're going to take our extra piece of ribbon, and I'm doing this just straight from the spool. We're going to tie that in a knot around that piece there. Once we kind of know roughly the length we want, then we can trim that, and then once we get this sitting how we want it, we can trim the ends completely, and we can slide that along too if it's not quite in the right spot where you want it. Oh, I've gone too far now. There, like that. There we go, and we'll trim the ends of our ribbon. It might be a bit too long. That way, and we want to go the same angle that way. There we go. We can trim that up a little bit more if we need to once we get everything else on. Okay, next step. So that's our card base ready to go. Next step is we want to layer our die cut frame with our early espresso piece. Okay, so I'll just use a little bit of Stampin' Seal to do that. Okay, so we're just going to layer those two pieces together. Again, just with an even border, should be a 2mm border around the edges. Okay, and then that piece is going to go straight onto our cardstock. So I'm going to use some multi-purpose liquid glue this time. Remember, you want a strong adhesive for this one too, because you're going onto the textured surface, and this gold is, you know, it gives a little bit more of a sort of a sort of more of a slippery kind of surface for this to adhere to. So we want to line this panel up so that you've got basically an even border at the two sides and the top. Okay, that looks about right. That looks not too bad. So press that down nice and firmly. Give that a moment. Okay, good. All right, next we have the little fence parts. Now for these, because they are so fine, I'm going to use some of the fine tip glue pen. You can use the multi-purpose if you like, but this comes out much finer. So I like this one. So we're going to use some of this and we'll just test it on our silicone craft sheet because the glue comes straight off the silicone craft sheet. So I'll test it over there just to make sure that I've got it flowing. Just add it to these little bits. It's nice and thin. There we go. All right, now we want to attach this so that it's sitting above the stitch line, and we want the little ends going right the way to that early espresso layer. Okay, so just lining that up along the top of that stitched design that's embossed into it. Okay, then we'll do the one on the other side. Now these are going to overlap a little bit in the middle, okay, but that's okay. So I am going to be designing a class with this suite, so keep an eye out for that. That's going to be coming really soon, in the next week-ish. Oops. I'll be advertising that. I just have to, yeah, I've got to design the project still for that. There we go. Okay, so we're just going to overlap them in the middle. Now you're not going to see that part where they're going to overlap because the pots are going to go there. With the liquid glue, you want to cap that straight away as soon as you finish using it. The fine tip glue pen. It does dry very quickly in the tip, so you want to cap that one straight away. Okay, so now we are ready to layer everything up. All right, so we'll get all of our little pieces. And we'll get our multi-purpose liquid glue. Now this time what I did is I did actually trim. I worked out where my pot was going to go. This is going to go up on some dimensionals, but I worked out where my pot was going to go and then worked out where I was going to lay all my pieces. And then I trimmed a little bit off the stem because the pot is going to have, so trim about half of the stem off that one. The pot is going to have dimensionals behind it. So you don't want to have to try and get those long stems, especially this one, which is so long. It almost stuck out the bottom of the pot, which I didn't want. So I just trimmed about half of those off. And then for that one, I just trimmed about, centimeter, yeah, about that off the pot. All right, and then we'll just adhere these down. Keep our pot nearby because we're going to work out the positioning of that pot as we lay these down. So this one's going to go right out to the side like that, but we want the stem to make sure that it's going to be sitting within the pot where the pot is going to go. Okay, so that'll be good there. So we'll stick that one there, and we'll do the same with the green leafy bit. So pot is there, this bit is going to go out towards there. You want to make sure that the stem is going to be within the pot because otherwise that would just look wrong if it wasn't. Okay, so that's going to go out about there. Then we've got the lighter color of the stems. That's going to tuck in behind, and in fact I think I added that. Should I add that last or add it now? When I was designing the card I think I added this bit last. but now that I know where it's going to go, we're going to add it now. All right, so a little bit of glue behind that one there, and that's going to tuck down there like that. Okay, and then this piece here, this one's going to go on dimensionals as well, and this one is going to be on dimensionals. All right, so we're going to grab our mini Stampin' Dimensionals. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Stampin' Dimensionals, basically what they are is it's just 3D mounting foam. Just gives you a bit of dimension with your project. That's basically what it is. So they're cut in hexagon shapes. You've got the regulars and you've got the minis. Okay, so depending on what project you're working on, the size that you need, and then you can trim them down, you know, as you need. So I'm just going to add some minis to this one here. I'd add one more just there, just for good measure. And with the pot, I'm just going to add them to each side so that that just gives me a little bit more space down the center in case I need to, yeah, for this sort of, the stems of this one to fit down through the center a little bit easier. So with the stems of this one, I've just left them plain. I haven't added any dimensional to those. Okay, and we'll pop that one down first before our pot. So we'll just remove the backings of those dimensionals because they are double-sided adhesive. I haven't removed them from my pot yet, so I want to just work out where my pot is going to sit first so that I can tuck this one down there and have them like that. Okay, so I know where they're going to go, and then we can adhere the pot. So if you want to, then you can add a little dab of glue behind the stems there, or the stalks, just to hold that down out of the way. Okay, because that part's going to be behind the pot, so that piece there won't matter if that's flat. And then we'll remove our dimensionals from our pot. For this one, we're going to have this coming out of this pot and sort of sticking out as though it's, you know, some twigs sort of sitting in that pot, just hanging out the side like that. Okay. So I think I did trim that one a little bit. So I might trim some of that off the bottom so that that sits down nicely into there. Okay, so we're just going to glue that to the pot. So we'll just put a little bit of glue on the bottom there and attach that to the back of our pot like so. Okay. All right. Now for this one, we're going to need a couple of layers of dimensionals because this pot is already up on dimensionals, and then we want to lay this one above, like sort of on top of that one, to look like this one is more at the front. So what we need to do is work out the placement. We're going to need to put a dimensional on this side here, and then on the opposite side we're going to need 2 layers of dimensional, because we'll have one layer which is already under here, and then the second layer which is under this side of the pot. Okay, so we'll flip that over upside down. So we're going to put one layer on this side, oops, and then a double layer on this side. So we'll add our first layer, then we'll remove the backings of that one, and we'll add a second layer so that that'll sit up nicely in front of the pretty peacock coloured pot. Oh, bending my twigs there. There we go. Okay. All right, and so then when you place this down, you just have to make sure you've got that single layer of dimensionals just sitting on that pot there. And then the double layer of dimensionals will sit down on the front of the card there. Is that about right? That's about right. Okay, so we'll press that on. There we go. And now we've got our sentiment label. And the same thing with our sentiment label. If you work out where it's going to go, I like to then flip it over. Okay, so it's going to sit about like that. Flip it over. We're going to pop one dimensional there where it's going to sit attached to the Pretty Peacock pot. And where it's hanging off here off the edge onto this lower part of the cardstock, we're going to need a double layer there. Okay, so we can take that off. Take those backings off. And this part here where it's going to attach to the little terracotta pot, we're going to add a little bit of glue just there, so that that part will stay put as well and it's not going to lift up or get caught or anything crazy. And we're just going to pop that down there in the center like that. That's straight. Yep. Okay, there we go. All right, now for the embellishing, we're going to use again the gold Metallic Enamel Effects Basics. Now what I did with this one, because I was creating it, I needed to have it created, you know, in a hurry. What I did is I did two things actually. I had already made these little embellishments on my silicone craft sheet, and basically all I did is I lifted them off with my Take Your Pick tool and then put a little glue behind them and then pop them down on the project. Okay, so you can do it that way, or you can use the enamel effect directly to your project, but just do a test first on either scrap paper or on your silicone craft sheet, okay, to make sure that you get the right. So hold the bottle up straight, squeeze it gently, okay, till you get your little blob like that. And then over here we want a large one and then a small one. Okay, you want to add a fair bit because you want it to be sort of blobby like a pearl. There we go. So you can add them directly to your cardstock like that as well. What you don't want is you don't want air bubbles. So you do want this to start flowing before you apply it. There we go. All right, we'll leave it at like that. So there we go. There is our finished project. So what do you think? So as you can see, the Faux Patina background looks a little bit different between the two. And in fact, this one, I actually went quite heavy today with the enamel effects and got it quite a lot deeper than what I did last night, which is really great. I'm really happy with that. But you can see how you get a little bit of a different background every time you do it, which is super cool. So I'll just tweak our little ribbon here, get that to sort of sit down a little bit. Oh, I know what I didn't do. I didn't add a glue dot underneath my knot on my bow. I do like to do that just to keep that in place. So we'll just quickly do that now because otherwise I will forget later. Oops. I'll just slip a little glue dot under there just to hold that knot down, because that knot is a separate piece of ribbon and we don't want that coming off. So there you go. Then you can add to the inside. I haven't done the inside yet, but then you can add another layer in here. So I would do the same size as what you've made this piece here. So that would be 10.1 centimeters by 14.45 centimeters. I probably use a piece of vanilla, do a bit of blending brush, sorry, not blending brush, dauber, some ink around the edges as well. You might want to do, you know, might want to put one of the little fences there, or you might want to put a little pot in the corner or something to decorate it up. But I usually do my inserts when I'm going to be sending my cards so that I know, I don't stamp on them. I usually put the inserts in and then I stamp my sentiment inside, or my greeting inside, once I know who is going to be the recipient. So there you go. So there is my project for you today. I hope you enjoyed that. So I will just quickly tip the camera back face to face so that I can say goodbye to you all in person. So bear with me one moment. Okay, so we'll just adjust the camera. Oops, I'm dropping things here. All good. Okay. There we go. Just adjust these lights. All right, so there we go. Oops. Oh, clicked on the wrong thing then. All good. So there we go. So there we have our beautiful Faux Patina texture, earthen textures card. So I hope you really liked that. So there you go. Isn't it cool? That background is just gorgeous. Playing with that Faux Patina design is really a lot of fun. And yeah, as I said, just play around with the different colors. You can get lots of color variation depending on the colors that you use in the background. But if you Google patina, then you'll be able to see all of the different colors that you get in an actual patina. So there's some of my samples. Again, that is with the copper using the enamel effects, and these ones are all using embossing powder and just playing with the different colors. This one I think is my favorite one. This one, I love that one. Yeah, but I like the one that we created today too. So there you go. So if there's anything I can do to help you, or you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments. I do get notified when people comment on my videos, so I can respond to you. But thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed that and learned something new, some new techniques, another way of using those beautiful products. And yeah, I hope that you have fun enjoying these products, but let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. All of my links will be in the description of this video, both here on YouTube and over on Facebook. So feel free to get in contact with me, and yeah, and please follow me on my other social media platforms, on Facebook, Instagram, here on YouTube, Pinterest as well. And what have I forgot? And my blog. Remember my blog as well, Mandy's papercraftcreations.blogspot.com. All right. Well, I hope you have a great weekend. We're coming up on the weekend. Today's Thursday, so you've got one more day and then the weekend. But I hope you have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all again next time. So happy crafting, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye.